The wind howled through the Colorado mountains like a creature in agony, clawing at the pines and rock faces as if to shred the very earth. Snow drove sideways, a thick, blinding curtain that swallowed roads, fences, and all sound. On such a night, any sensible person stayed indoors. Yet on the narrow road north of Dry Creek, a solitary figure pushed onward through the gale, head bowed, coat frozen stiff. His name was Elias Ward, and most folks in Dry Creek hardly noticed him anymore. There was a time Elias owned land, not a vast spread, but enough to build a dream upon, a small parcel where grass grew tall in the good years and hope grew even taller. Then drought arrived, debts piled up, and the land slipped from his grasp into the hands of men who never once touched the soil. Now Elias lived in a patched-up shack on the town's edge, built from old boards and tar paper, taking whatever work others refused. Some nights he ate, some nights he did not. People called him unlucky, some called him foolish, most simply forgot he existed. The blizzard did not care who he was. Snow banked high around his horse's legs as Elias urged the weary animal forward. The cold sliced through his coat and settled deep in his bones. His fingers burned, then went numb on the reins. He had no good reason to be out here. No job awaited him, no promise of shelter lay ahead, only a heavy silence inside him that felt worse than any freeze. Then he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind shifting pitch, the way a storm can play tricks on the mind. But the sound came again, faint, broken, and full of pain. A horse. Elias pulled hard on the reins. His gelding snorted and shifted nervously. The sound came once more, clearer now, a weak cry that did not belong to the storm. A smart man would have turned back. Traps were not uncommon in these hills, but Elias felt something tighten in his chest. He swung down from the saddle, snow swallowing his boots, and tied his horse to a stunted pine. He followed the sound, step by heavy step. At the base of a twisted tree, half buried in a drift, lay a mare. She was a wild Mustang, her dark coat matted with ice and blood. One hind leg lay twisted and swollen. Her sides heaved, round with pregnancy, each breath shallow and ragged. Around her neck hung the torn remains of a rope chewed nearly through. Her eyes opened when Elias knelt. They were deep brown and weary, but not wild with fear. They held something else, pure endurance. Elias swallowed hard. Wild horses did not let men approach. They fought or fled or died, but this mare only watched him, her strength nearly spent. He shrugged off his coat and laid it over her shaking body. The cold bit into his skin, but he kept digging, clawing snow away with bare hands until his fingers screamed. He braced his shoulder against her flank and pushed with everything he had left. With a low groan, the mare lurched free and collapsed onto firmer ground. Elias nearly fell beside her. Slowly, gently, he looped the frayed rope and coaxed her to her feet. Step by painful step, he led her back toward the trail. By the time they reached his shack, both man and horse were near collapse. He guided her into the old cattle shed, spread what little hay he had left, and lit a small fire in a rusted brazier. The storm beat against the walls, but inside the cold eased just enough. The mare lay trembling but alive. Elias sat beside her in the dirt, watching the rise and fall of her sides. For the first time in months, he felt something stir that he thought had died. "Hope, you made it through," he murmured. The mare flicked an ear as if accepting the name. Morning came grey and quiet. The storm had weakened, leaving Dry Creek buried and hushed. Elias knew the mare's wounds were beyond his skill. He wrapped himself against the cold and headed into town. At the forge, sparks flew as Clara Boone brought her hammer down on glowing iron. She was young, strong, and carried herself like someone who had learned early not to wait for help. "Ward," she said when she saw him. "I need you," Elias said. Clara didn't laugh, she didn't question. She grabbed herbs, cloth, and a kettle. Back in the shed, Clara worked with calm focus, cleaning the wound, binding the leg, mixing crushed leaves into a thick paste. The mare flinched but did not fight. As Clara checked her neck, her face hardened. "These aren't accident marks," she said. "Someone tied her." Elias felt his stomach twist. Before he could speak, the shed door opened. Sheriff Abel Harlow stepped inside, snow clinging to his coat. His eyes scanned the scene with thin amusement. "Ward," he said. "She would have died out there," Elias replied. Harlow shrugged. "A wild horse is property. If she lives, sell her. If she dies, bury her." He turned and left, his laughter swallowed by the wind. The silence afterward felt heavy. "She didn't come to you by chance," Clara said quietly. Elias looked at the mare, then nodded once. The storm returned that night as wind shook the shack. Storm Grace began to pace. Her breathing grew harsh. Elias knew the signs too late to deny them. She was giving birth. He ran through the snow to fetch Clara. They returned just in time. The shed filled with sweat, steam, and fear. Grace strained, her strength nearly gone. Elias held her head, whispering. Clara worked fast and steady. Then at last a small, slick body slid onto the straw. The foal gasped, then cried out weakly. Tears burned Elias' eyes as Grace gathered her newborn close, fierce and protective. But the peace shattered when Grace suddenly stiffened, ears flat, eyes locked on the door. Elias stepped outside with a lantern. Fresh footprints marked the snow. Someone had been watching. He turned back inside, his jaw tight. "They'll come back," Clara whispered. Elias looked at the mare, and the foal curled against her side, and felt something hard settle in his chest. Outside, the wind howled again, carrying the promise that the storm was not finished yet. The storm loosened its grip over the next 3 days, but the danger around Elias Ward only tightened. Morning light spilled over Dry Creek in pale streaks, revealing roofs bowed under snow and streets carved into narrow paths. Life crept back into the town slowly, cautious and quiet. But on the edge of town, in the battered shed, a different kind of life burned bright and fragile. The foal grew stronger by the hour. At first, it could barely lift its head. Then it struggled onto shaky legs, falling more than standing. Storm Grace never left its side. Even wounded, she stood guard, her scarred body curved around the foal like a living wall. Her eyes followed every sound, every shadow. Elias slept little. Each creak of wood, each gust of wind made his hand tighten around the rifle he kept close. The footprints in the snow haunted him. Someone had been there, someone new. Clara came often, bringing clean bandages and warm broth. She spoke softly to Grace and worked carefully around the foal, earning small signs of trust, a lowered head, an unpinned ear. "She's watching everything," Clara said one morning. Elias nodded. He could not ignore what he had seen in the mountains. The rope burns, the iron trap, the broken pen half buried in snow. This was no lone hunter's work. It was organized, planned. On the 4th morning, Elias saddled his old gelding. "I need to go back up the ridge," he told Clara. "You won't find peace up there," Clara said. "I won't find it here either if I don't," he replied. He rode out with Storm Grace limping beside him. He tried to turn her back, but she refused, planting her hooves and lifting her head with quiet defiance, so he let her come. The climb was slow. Snow crust cracked underfoot and the air thinned as they rose. Halfway up the ridge, Elias dismounted and knelt, brushing snow aside. Tracks, wagon tracks. They ran parallel, deep and heavy, pressed into the frozen ground. No settler would haul a wagon this way in a storm. Elias followed them a short distance until something dark glinted under the snow. An iron trap. Its jaws were wide and cruel, stained dark with old blood. Elias' jaw tightened. This was where Storm Grace had been caught. This was where she had torn herself free. Farther on, the trees opened into a hollow. Broken wooden posts jutted from the snow, ropes frayed and frozen in place. Horsehair clung to splintered boards, a holding pen. "They were gathering them," Elias whispered. Storm Grace stamped once, snorting, her ears fixed toward the western ridge. Elias followed her gaze. That night he rode to a cabin by a frozen creek. The old man who lived there, Ezekiel Whitaker, opened the door slowly, his eyes sharp despite his age. "You brought one back," Whitaker said, looking past Elias at the mare. Elias told him everything. Whitaker listened without interrupting. When Elias finished, the old man stirred the fire and sighed. "They never left," Whitaker said. "The herd. People said they were gone, but I've seen signs for years. "Someone's hunting them," Elias said. Whitaker nodded. The name did not surprise Elias when Whitaker spoke it. The biggest ranch owner in the county, the man who paid well and asked few questions, the man the sheriff never crossed. "They'll come for your mare," Whitaker said. Elias rode back in silence, the weight of the truth pressing on him. That night, Storm Grace lifted her head and cried out long and clear. The sound rolled across the hills like a call meant for something far away. By morning, Elias knew what it meant. She wanted to go home. Clara argued when he told her. "She can barely walk," she said. "She's calling them," Elias said. They prepared anyway. Clara stayed behind with the foal while Elias led Storm Grace into the mountains. Step by careful step, they climbed through narrow cuts and frozen creeks. Then the land opened. Silver hollow, grass rolled green beneath a thin frost. Streams ran clear. Sunlight spilled into the valley like something holy. And then Elias heard it. Hooves. The ground trembled as dozens of Mustangs surged into view. They flowed like a living river, manes flying, bodies moving as one. Elias' breath caught in his throat. Storm Grace lifted her head and cried out again. The herd answered, but the joy curdled when Elias saw the traps. Fresh iron jaws set along the valley edges. Wagon tracks cutting deep scars through the earth. They were already here. Riders appeared on the far ridge, armed, calm, certain. The man at the front reined in his horse and smiled. "Well now," he called. Elias raised his rifle, his heart pounding. The man laughed. Storm Grace stepped forward, placing herself between Elias and the riders. The herd shifted, restless, and the valley held its breath. The fight for Silver Hollow was about to begin. The wind slid low across Silver Hollow, carrying the smell of frost and iron. Elias stood still, rifle steady in his hands. Across the meadow, the riders spread out slowly, confident and patient. Storm Grace moved first. She stepped forward, placing herself fully between Elias and the riders. Her body was scarred and still healing, her limp clear. Yet she stood taller than any horse Elias had ever seen. She let out a long, powerful cry that rolled across the hollow and struck the cliffs like thunder. The herd answered. Dozens of Mustangs shifted as one, hooves stamping, bodies pressing close together. They did not scatter. They formed a living wall behind Grace, eyes bright, muscles tight, ready. The man at the front narrowed his eyes. His smile faded. "Easy now," he called, lifting a hand. "You already did," Elias said, his voice steady despite the fear burning in his chest. The riders moved anyway. They came in from the sides, ropes swinging, trying to split the herd. One charged forward, aiming for Storm Grace. Elias fired a warning shot into the dirt at the horse's feet. The rider reined back, cursing. Then the valley exploded. The herd surged forward like a breaking wave. Hooves struck the ground in a roar that drowned out shouting and gunfire. Mustangs slammed into brush and traps, snapping ropes and sending iron jaws flying. Snow and dirt sprayed into the air. Elias ran along the edge, shouting, waving his hat, guiding the flow where he could. He saw Clara appear on the ridge with townsfolk behind her, men and women who had followed the sound of hooves and the call of something bigger than fear. They lit fires, waved coats, and blocked the narrow paths the riders needed. The hunters panicked. One rider was thrown as his horse reared. Another dropped his rope and fled when a wall of muscle thundered past him. The valley filled with noise, not chaos, but force, pure and unstoppable. Storm Grace ran with the herd, not ahead, not behind, but within them. Every time she cried out, they followed her lead, turning away from traps and toward open ground. The man who had smiled before now shouted orders that no one followed. One rider broke through, heading for the foal hidden near the rocks. Elias saw him too late. He ran. Before Elias could reach him, Storm Grace turned. Despite her wound, despite her exhaustion, she charged. She struck the rider's horse square in the chest, sending both tumbling into the snow. The man scrambled back, terror finally breaking through his confidence. The herd poured past, escaping through the far ridge, hooves fading into the distance like rolling thunder. Silence followed, heavy and shaking. The riders left what remained of their gear and fled the way they had come. No one chased them. Elias dropped to his knees in the snow, breath burning his lungs. Clara reached him and grabbed his shoulder. "They're free," she said, her voice trembling. Storm Grace returned slowly, her sides heaving. The foal wobbled toward her, pressing close. Grace lowered her head, touching the foal gently, then looked at Elias. In her eyes he saw no fear, only peace. They returned to Dry Creek changed. Word spread faster than the storm ever had. People came to see the mare, the foal, the man who stood when no one else would. The sheriff stopped laughing. The ranch owner stopped showing his face. The shed became a haven. Fences were repaired. Feed appeared, help arrived without being asked. Elias no longer ate alone. Storm Grace healed slowly, proudly. Her limp never fully faded, but it never slowed her spirit. The foal grew strong, fast, and wild, kicking at sunlight and running circles around the yard. Some nights when the wind shifted just right, Elias swore he could hear hooves far off in the mountains. He would stand on the porch, Clara beside him, and listen. Hope, he learned, was not loud. Sometimes it came buried in snow, wounded and forgotten. Sometimes it looked at you and dared you not to turn away. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to answer, it changed everything. If this story of courage and a second chance moved you, show the video some love. Give it a like, share it with someone who needs a lift, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a tale of hope fighting back against the storm. Her spirit. The foal grew strong, fast, and wild, kicking at sunlight and running circles around the yard. Some nights when the wind shifted just right, Elias swore he could hear hooves far off in the mountains. He would stand on the porch, Clara beside him, and listen. Hope, he learned, was not loud. Sometimes it came buried in snow, wounded and forgotten. Sometimes it looked at you and dared you not to turn away. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to answer, it changed everything. If this story of courage and a second chance moved you, show the video some love. Give it a like, share it with someone who needs a lift, and hit that subscribe button so you never miss a tale of hope fighting back against the storm.